in Yellow Springs, Ohio, the home of the Yellow Spring. And we essentially camp out in a kids' dorm, a children's camp. And we spend Friday night and all day Saturday, and then Sunday morning doing a retreat at this place. We bring a truckload of cushions. We bring a truckload of food. Marilyn, if you're here, I'm still thinking about your food. Oh my gosh, great soup. Anyway, we do a camp out basically, and then we do a modified schedule that is very similar to the retreat schedule for our home retreat center at Karma Triana Dharma Chakra in Woodstock, New York. And this gives people who are unfamiliar with retreat a little taste of what a retreat feels like. And so we've been doing this every year. I can't remember how long, but it's got to be more than 15 years. It could be 20 years that we've been doing the fall retreat. And just really want to thank all of you who have supported us through the years and come down and stayed overnight in the dorms with all of the interesting things, the crickets in the dorms, the people in the dorms, everything, and those Saturday night fire around the fire ring. So just thanks to everybody who has been with us in the past, and welcome to all of you who are first-time visitors in our virtual fall retreat. We don't get to toast marshmallows together this year, and we don't get to sit and chant Chenrezig together this year, but we will be able to share some Dharma together this year. So thanks very much for coming. Also want to thank the organizers of Columbus Karma Take Some Choling, the executive board, Kim Miracle, Chuck Drake, Eric Weinberg, Lance Moyer, and Marjorie Hill Langston. Thanks very much to our administrative board, who is paying the bills and making sure everything happens here. So thanks to all of them as well. And thanks to all of you for donating for this event. The donations that you give, I spoke to the board last night, all of the donations minus the cost of presenting this program on Eventbrite will go 100%. All of the proceeds will go to our rebuilding campaign. So I'm really, really pleased to tell you that the dollars that you donated for this program will go into concrete, and it will go in. We just poured some walls today, I was told. And so the center is being built kind of even as we speak. So thanks to all of you for that. The topic for this weekend is a mindful life. And what we'll be doing is there will be 4 sessions, a 2-hour session this evening, well, something about an hour and a half and change. And then tomorrow morning, a 2-hour session, a 2-hour session tomorrow afternoon. And then Sunday morning, we'll follow with a 1-hour open discussion with all 3 of our presenters. So all of the details of this are in the schedule that we posted in chat. We'll try to also, there's also a copy of the schedule on the event page on Eventbrite. So that's a little bit about the schedule. And this is what's really interesting is that if you look at our schedule, tomorrow morning, if you want to have more of a retreat environment at your home, you can do some meditation yourself from 9 a.m. Eastern time to 9:45 Eastern time, and just do some quiet sitting on your own. But then our webcast will start at 10 a.m. tomorrow and run until noon. Then there'll be a lunch break, and then there'll be another not webcast quiet sitting session from 1 to 1:45. Then webcast from 2 to 4. And then in the I guess we are going to webcast Chenrezig. All right, that's great. We're going to webcast Chenrezig tomorrow from 4:15 to 5:15. And I have a feeling I'll be leading that. So that will be tomorrow afternoon, and we will have on screen the prayers will be on screen so you can read. We'll have like follow the bouncing ball. Not really, we won't follow the bouncing ball. But anyway, if you're old enough to know what that is, hi. Anyway, in any case, then on Sunday morning, you're welcome to join with our usual Columbus KTC programming. At 8:30, there will be the Green Tara Sadhana webcast, and there will also be group meditation at 10, from 10 to 11. And then our session is going to be a little later. It will be 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll have a final teaching session with myself, Lama Tom, and Lama Adam. And anyway, so that's a way that you can kind of extend your experience of retreat this weekend. And I wanted to say a few words here at the top about retreat. I think that as was mentioned, as you saw in the publicity material for this retreat, it's been a year, shall we say. It's 2020 has kind of been a year packed into 6 months for many people, because the last 6 to 7 months since the outbreak of the coronavirus and the difficulties that we've all experienced physically, emotionally, financially, mentally, all of the problems that have visited us in the last 6 months, it's been really hard. And I've talked to people who've had COVID. I've had people whose loved ones have had COVID. I've known people who've passed away. It's been a really, really tough time for many, many people. And not being able to meet together has, of course, kind of made some of us feel isolated and a little bit, shall we say, anxious about life in general. But because of technology, we are able to be together, which makes me feel a little bit better. And I hope it helps you feel a little bit better too. That because of technology, because this pandemic happened at a time when technology was advanced enough that we can see and hear each other and actually meditate together, that's kind of a blessing for us. So, and so even though many of you, like me, I'm an older person, so I've been home quite a lot the last 6 months. And those of you who know what my travel schedule was like beforehand will know that this is new for me. But I've actually been doing okay. And so my husband Mike and myself have been mainly home, and it's been a little bit like retreat. But now I think it's time for us to kind of get together and talk a little bit about what's important, which is the teachings of the Dharma. So if you want to take this weekend as a retreat, I really highly recommend it. That what we do when we are at our fall retreat is we do not have a silent retreat, but we try to observe something called noble silence at night. So from the time you go to bed until you have breakfast the next morning, we try to keep silence, and as a way of mindfully practicing our mindfulness during the weekend period, during the retreat period. Retreat is a gift you give yourself. When you're feeling stressed, to be able to to unplug from everyday life it can be very reviving for a lot of people. To just unplug from all of the responsibilities of everyday life and take a little bit of time for practice of meditation. And so we're happy to facilitate that for you. I myself know a tiny bit about retreat I did a few short retreats before I did my 3-year retreat. I did like a 1-day retreat, 2-day retreat, 3-day retreat, 1-week retreat, and a 2-week retreat. To help me build up my ability to be alone and my ability to practice under my own power. And when you hear the other talks this weekend from Lama Tom Broadwater and Lama Adam Berner, they're also going to talk a little bit about their retreat experience and how meditating in a concentrated way is a good way to become more familiar with yourself. Because often when we have all of the roles that we play in our life, maybe we're somebody's mom, maybe we're somebody's daughter, maybe we're a sister, brother, wife, husband. We're an employee, we're an employer, we're a volunteer. We are everything to everybody. And when when we become overwhelmed with our responsibilities, it's really good to take a little bit of time to back up and give ourselves the gift of retreat. So that's what I'm hoping that this weekend will be for you. I think this evening's program will be a little bit of an introduction to the topic of a mindful life. And then this evening, we're going to talk a little bit about the purposes of meditation. We're going to do a meditation instruction. We're going to do a little meditation together. We'll talk about obstacles in meditation and also how to bring mindfulness off the cushion. Then tomorrow, Lama Adam will be presenting a little bit about developing your meditation through compassion and wisdom. And Lama Tom will be sharing about next steps for our mindfulness and compassion. So it's going to be a progressive program, and hope you can join us for all three parts. And if not, that's okay. We are recording these. So let me start by asking, I'm going to ask a question in a minute here, so start thinking about it. And that is, if you have anything in particular that you would like to learn this weekend from the program, if you have anything that's kind of on your mind, something that you want to make sure you hear about this weekend, you can either type it in chat or I believe if I'm right about this, Lama Adam, people can unmute themselves. Is that possible?
I think that's true. Yeah.
Okay. So, and so if you have something that you would like to make sure you hear this weekend or something that you're curious about, you can either type it in chat or let me know now. I'll make a note of it. Climate change. Got it. Okay. Any other things that people want to hear about this weekend? Chu, okay. Yeah. Can make sure. Does anybody else have anything they would like to hear about this weekend? How to stay mindful during creative work. Oh yeah, that's a really great topic. Because we use our minds for so many things. We use our minds to solve problems, but we also use our minds to create. Oh, good. And then structuring a meditation practice. Yeah, that's a really important thing too, because we have to be able to get on our seat and then use our time on the cushion well. Yes. Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Yu Chang, thank you. Any other? Not getting caught up in the stress of others. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Not going to every fight I am invited to. Yes, I understand that. Okay. Yeah, this is really helpful. Thank you. Okay. Going once, going twice. Anybody else have something they want to add? These are all good topics.
There was one more in the chat. Somebody requested to learn about prayer.
Prayer. Okay. I'm sorry, I did miss that one. Okay. Great. Oh, yeah, I see it now. Thank you. Oh, hi, Hildy. Yeah, I see. Hi. Yay. I just sent you like 20 pounds of documents. I hope you enjoyed them. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. Okay, well, that's a good place to start. So, I guess the I have a funny thing to start with. This evening, I was asked to give a short talk on death and dying to a group of people who were gathering at a local center, uh, community center, and they were learning about uh, the Mexican observance of Day of the Dead, and so they wanted me to talk about the Buddhist attitudes toward death and dying. And what was so interesting about it was that I found myself talking about the taming of the mind that happens in meditation as an integral part of working with illness and death, because no matter where you go, there you are, as they say. Your mind is what you take with you everywhere. It is what allows you to experience beauty. It's what allows you to experience love and compassion. Your mind is what brings you into relationship with others. Your mind is what brings you into relationship with the earth. So your mind is the be all and end all of your experience, and yet how little we know about it. We use our mind for so many things. How many times have any of us said, "Oh, I just have to figure this out. I just have to think about this and figure it out." How many of us have gotten into trouble and then had to think our way out of it? And many of us have used our minds for the education of ourselves and the education of others. We've used our minds to benefit others by helping them with their problems. We've used our minds for so many things, and some of the ancient Buddhist texts talk about the mind as either a horse or an elephant. That there it's a creature of work, that we use our minds like a creature of work, a pack horse, or an elephant that can carry and lift and work. We use our mind like a tool or a working animal, but we don't realize what our mind really is. We don't know ourselves very well. Sometimes we're carried away by our thoughts. Sometimes we're carried away by our emotions and our feelings. Sometimes we just really, really feel bad. And sometimes we really, really feel good. But all of these experiences, whether we feel bad or good, all of these things are happening in our mind. And so becoming a friend to our own mind is, I guess you could say, the most important friendship we will make in this life, becoming friends with our own mind. His Holiness the 17th Jawang Karmapa, Urgent Trinley Dorje, he describes mind as being like home. He said it is our original home. It is where we always return. So our mind is like our home. And when we work with the mind through meditation, it's as though we're coming home to our own mind. And so the practice of mindfulness, which is why we are together today to learn about the practice of mindfulness, is about how to work with our mind, how to begin to engage with our mind, how to make friends with our mind. And so the techniques of meditation have been taught in the Buddhist tradition for 2,500 years. The historical Buddha Shakyamuni, he was the one who attained a very deep state of meditation that brought about a spiritual awakening, a deep spiritual insight that wasn't just for him. It was something that had an effect on everyone around him. You could say he glowed. And when people came to him and said, what have you learned? What have you discovered? He gave his initial teachings on the four truths that he learned from his practice of meditation. These became known as the four truths known by the noble, or the four noble truths. He said he discovered in his meditation the causes of happiness and the causes of suffering. He discovered how to increase the causes of happiness in the mind and how to decrease the causes of suffering in the mind. And through his practice of meditation and his teachings, he taught others how to meditate. And when the Buddha taught them, they also, through time and practice, they also attained the same state of awakening as he attained. And in that way, they became awakened beings also. Of course, many people hearing that this great teacher had come amongst them asked the Buddha, well, which of the gods are you an incarnation of? Are you the incarnation of one of the gods? And he said, no, I'm not. And they said, well, then are you an ordinary person? He said, no, I'm an awakened person, which placed him between ordinary and divine. And as such, I prefer to think of the Buddha as a saintly being, an awakened being, rather than saying he's ordinary or he's divine. Yes, there are images of the Buddha seated in meditation, and they're made of metal and they're painted and they are very beautiful and serene. And we, as Buddhists, we honor these images. We honor these images because of what the Buddha accomplished. He accomplished this wisdom that knows the causes of happiness and the wisdom that knows the causes of suffering, and the wisdom that can then choose to cultivate the causes of happiness and to decrease the causes of suffering. And in this way, the practice of Buddhism is centered upon the mind, because the mind is the seat of all of our experience. It's where we feel happiness, it's where we feel suffering. The body conveys information through the senses, but it's the mind that experiences that information. You could say that the eye, the organ of vision, does not think, the nose does not think, the taste does not think, the ears don't think, the tactile sensations doesn't think. It is our mind that thinks and takes in this information. And it is our mind that experiences happiness and suffering. So then if we want to work with our experience of happiness and suffering in this life, we need to learn how to work with our mind. So this is the topic and why we are practicing and learning about meditation. If we go back to the first collection of the Buddha's sayings, he said, we are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts, and with our thoughts we make the world. And so he's saying, we are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts, and with our thoughts we make the world. So what he means by this is that our experience of the world is our own. Sometimes we may feel buffeted around by circumstances and beset by external problems. But in the end, it is our own mind that we need to work with. The external world is only a set of inputs. It is our mind that decides what to do with those inputs and how to process them and how to work with them and how to engage. And so the Buddha in the second set of verses, he said, if we think, speak, and act with an impure mind, suffering follows us, just as certainly as the wheel follows the ox that draws the cart. And if we think, speak, and act with a pure mind, happiness follows us like a shadow that's unshakable. And so in this way, the Buddha established his basic teachings. He said that we need to recognize that the mind is the monarch, and the speech and the body are the subjects of that monarch, and that if we want to change our experience, we need to change our mind. And so when the Buddha taught these four thoughts, these four truths known by the noble, he said the first noble truth is that suffering is part of life. The second is that suffering has a cause. The third is that because suffering has a cause, it has a solution. And the fourth truth is that there is a path that leads to the end of suffering. That suffering is part of life is something we may know intellectually, but not really necessarily believe. When misfortune befalls us, often we try to run away from it to one of two extremes: denial, blind denial, and blind expression. Let's say we're feeling discomfort. Often when we feel discomfort, we might pretend that nothing is happening. But we also might become very upset about something. But not in neither case have we ever sat with and felt what we're feeling. We run away from from these feelings and run away from the truth of how we're feeling into one of these two extremes. And I don't know if this is your experience or not, but when I run away, I tend to have a worse experience than if I would have stayed and worked with how I was feeling. So the Buddha said that that suffering is caused not by external things, but by our grasping and clinging and fixation. So suffering is part of life. And once we accept that it's part of life, we can begin to work with it. Secondly, the cause of suffering is not the external world. It's not the boss. It's not the neighbor. It's not even our thoughts. The cause of suffering is our fixation and clinging. And because fixation and clinging, we cling to people, things, situations, ideas. Because of these clingings and fixations, we suffer. And because of this, the third noble truth is follows right along after the second, which is if suffering has a cause and that cause is clinging and fixation, then the solution is to let go and to release fixation. But how do we release fixation? That is the work of the fourth noble truth, the path that leads to the end of suffering. And that path is summarized as the Eightfold Noble Path, which is again summarized as the four teachings of the Buddha. He said, do no harm, practice virtue, and tame your mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. The last one's just a summary. So we have do no harm. That means don't hurt yourself, don't hurt others. Practice virtue, which means take care of yourself and benefit others. And tame the mind, which means to learn how to tame your thoughts and mind so that you can begin to know the difference between benefit and harm, and then begin to choose benefit and relinquish the causes of harm. And so these are the basic teachings of the Buddha. And by doing these basic things, not harming yourself and not harming others, you have a more stable life. If a person is acting in a very selfish way, if they're lying and cheating and stealing and harming others, their mind is always unstable and always roiling from all of the confusion. I mean, how many of us have had trouble when we were kids and we lied about something and then we couldn't keep the lies straight? I mean, it's hard to be a child, right? And then you have all of these things happening and your mind is always moving. And so this is why the practice of meditation is beneficial, because when we can have a tamed mind, then we can have a more stable and tame activity of our personality, and we can be more available for others. So that's a little bit about the Four Noble Truths, the basic teachings of the Buddha about not harming, being of benefit, and taming the mind. And then the practice of meditation, which can benefit us, help us to become friends with our own mind, and then allow us to become beneficial for ourselves and others. And it's really interesting. While I was giving this talk, I was reflecting on some of the questions that people had in their list of things that they wanted to know about. And for some reason, the question of climate change stuck with me. Now, you might say, what does climate change have to do with mindfulness? And the answer is, it has everything to do with it. We have an outer environment that we live in, but it's in many ways, our outer environment is a reflection of the inner environment that we cultivate within our own minds. If we want to live in harmony with the exterior world, we also have to find peace within our own minds. And so being able to practice the taming of the mind or meditation, being able to do that, then if we can begin to work with our own mind, then we will actually be able to recognize how others are working with their minds or not, and how to be, I see the person is typing in engaged Buddhism as a idea. And it's really true, because if we can be engaged with the external world in a positive way, and we can be witnesses for the proper treatment of the earth, then this will be very helpful. His Holiness, the 17th Karmapa, for example, has himself begun to try to get his monastic institutions to be more in harmony with their surroundings, not polluting streams, and doing their best to reduce their carbon footprint and so forth. And I think that this is something that we can be engaged in also on an external way. It will be a reflection of our inner mind. So I want to see if there's anybody who has questions about the first part of the presentation. I will talk a little bit more about the external world in a bit, but I want to see if anybody has questions regarding any of the things we've talked about so far. Yes, if you have a question, you can unmute.
Hi, I'm Aaron from Washington, D.C. And I'm started meditating in the Shambhala tradition back in the 80s.
Mhm.
And so I suspect yours is a related tradition from what I understand.
Yeah, yeah, it is related. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we have similar ancestors. Marpa, Milarepa, and the whole crew.
Oh, that makes us distant cousins then.
That is correct. That is correct. And maybe not so distant. Thanks for saying hello. Did you have a question, or was that it?
That was it.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks for checking in. Now we have, we'll check back with you later. Let's see, we have another question. Let's see, this one's from, how specifically do we work with emotions? Okay, great question. I think that for many people, emotions do seem to be a little bit mysterious. They come out of nowhere, and they seem to go out of nowhere. They come and go seemingly out of nowhere. Sometimes they grip us as though they were external beings taking hold of us. And sometimes we feel a little bit out of control. And I think that one of the ways to begin to address the question of feeling and emotion is to talk about what meditation is and what it does. If we look at meditation as being a taming of the mind, then I keep thinking of these Buddhist diagrams showing the practice of meditation as being the practice of a person learning to tame an elephant. There's anybody who's seen the 9 stages of mindfulness drawings, the mind is likened to an elephant, which, if it is untamed, can cause terrible damage, but if it is tamed, can really do a lot of work and be of great benefit. So our emotions in some ways are like that elephant. They can be very powerful and they can be very helpful, but then they can also become very much wild and untamed and cause us a lot of pain and suffering. But when we practice the basic practice of meditation, what's the technique? We sit in a quiet way. We sit in a chair, or we sit on the floor, or we lie down, and we allow our attention to come to the breath. As the breath comes in and the breath goes out, we allow our attention to follow the breath as it comes out and goes in. And then when thoughts cross the screen of the mind, we notice them and we let them go through. If they capture our attention, we notice them, we label them thinking, we let them go, and then we return our attention to the breath for a fresh start. And so the reason I'm talking about this broad outline of the technique of meditation is to talk about emotion. Because when we are practicing this attention, being attentive to the breath, and a thought comes up, if the thought is mild, it will just pass straight through and it won't distract us from our attention to the breath. But what if a thought distracts us and attracts our attention and captivates us for a moment? It's almost like we've been reborn in the world of this thought of something that happened yesterday, or this thought of something that's going to happen tomorrow. We're captivated by it. And so it's almost like we take rebirth in this particular world or that particular world for just a little bit of time. And but the moment we notice that we have been captivated by the thought and we label it thinking and let it go, it disappears. So what was it made of? What was that thought? How powerful really was it? And so the reason that I talk about this first when we talk about emotions, is that many people don't realize that emotions begin with thought. Emotions begin with thought. From the moment that we experience an input until we become happy or sad, it's a very short time. Nonetheless, we are working with we're actually experiencing a thought in that moment. We're experiencing a thought in that moment. Let's use an example. Let's say I quarreled with someone and then I see them come through the door. Instantaneously, I will see them and then I will identify it's them. And then instantly I might have an emotional reaction based on the fact that we had quarreled. But here's the thing. That emotion began as the recognition of seeing that person. So in that way, the emotion sprang from a thought. A single thought led to that, but they were so close together that they looked like it was one thing. They looked like they were one thing. And that we would never have realized that the emotion began with a thought, but it did. I read about the Buddha's teachings on emotion. And what's interesting is that the Buddha taught that he didn't say that he didn't have a special word for emotion. And he didn't have a special word for thought. He basically said, that emotion and thought are the same thing. He called them mental events. He called them mental events. And so there was no special treatment given for to a thought versus an emotion. And so if we think about it, thought and emotion are the same. And that they all come from the same place. So in any case, and when the person is asking how we work with emotions, I think the first way to work with an emotion is to recognize that it comes from thought. And if we can begin to engage with thoughts and let go of thoughts, even just a simple thought in meditation, this means that eventually we can begin to work with the more powerful thoughts that are emotionally flavored. And so in this way, we first begin to work with emotions by recognizing that they are thoughts and that we can change them and release them. In the program, as the program progresses, we will cover several different techniques for working with emotions. There's going to be one method taught this evening, another one tomorrow, and another tomorrow afternoon. So we will actually progressively answer your question. But the first thing to recognize is that all emotions begin with thought. And that if we can learn how to let go of a thought, then we can begin to work with that thought and change it. I mean, I don't know if any of you have had this experience in meditation, but maybe you're sitting there one day and you're just observing your breath, and then this big, ugly, hairy thought comes up on you. It could be something terrible that happened in the past, or it could be something that happened yesterday, but it's big and ugly and hairy and it's grabbed you. But then you remember, I'm meditating. And then you label the thought thinking, you let it go, and it disappears. If you can let go of one big, ugly, hairy thought, then that means just about everything is eventually going to be up for grabs. And that this means that eventually we'll be able to work with more and more difficult things. So, so thank you for asking that question. And we will slowly, Michael will slowly be answering your question over the next couple of sessions. Now, I'm looking at the time, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to take about a 5-minute break here, if that's okay. And then when we get back together, we'll talk a little bit about the techniques of meditation and do some meditation together, and then talk about the difficulties we encounter when we try to meditate. Then we'll start to get with these questions that people are asking about how to structure meditation and how to build meditation into your day. So I'm going to turn off my screen for a few minutes, and then we will see you back here at just about almost the top of the hour. So we'll see you a few minutes before 8. Thanks. Back. Okay. Thanks for the break, and good to be back. So so now in the next part of the presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about meditation and do some meditation together. The Tibetan word for meditation is gom, G-O-M, gom. And it means becoming accustomed to or getting used to. And I guess the whole idea of making friends with your mind, you know, is a good thing to keep in your thoughts while you're learning about meditation. And so how do we get used to our minds? First, we start with a preparation. We start with a physical preparation and a mental preparation. And the mental preparation is the most important of these two. Those of you who have read Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche's book excellent at the beginning. I'll type the title into chat if I can get it to work here. And Kempo Carter Rinpoche, the founder of the Columbus KTC and the teacher for many of us, who passed away just last year at the age of 95. He wrote this lovely book called Excellent at the Beginning. He said that our practice of meditation should be embraced with the three excellences: excellent at the beginning, excellent in the middle, and excellent at the conclusion. And so excellent at the beginning means we start out with a motivation that is vast. In other words, we sit thinking, I'm sitting for the benefit, not just of myself, but for the benefit of all beings. So that's the motivation that we start with. Excellent in the middle means that we practice with good technique. And excellent at the end means we dedicate the goodness of our session. So excellent at the beginning, we might sit and think, from now until the end of this session, I dedicate myself to the practice of meditation. And by practicing meditation in this way, may I be of benefit to myself and others. So that's the mental preparation. The physical preparation consists of placing the body in a specific posture. There are lots of meditative postures. You will have seen pictures of them, but the two basic ones that I teach are sitting in a chair and sitting on the floor. If you're sitting in a chair, you can place your feet on the floor, flat on the floor. And if your feet don't touch the floor, then you have to put a cushion underneath your feet so that your feet are flat on the floor. And then you place your hands palm downward on the legs. I know some people say that they see people meditating with their palms upward, but the function of our meditation is grounding, of the meditation that we're learning is grounding. So we're going to put our hands palm downward on top of the legs. If you can put your feet hip width apart, that's the best. They don't need to be together or far apart, and hip width apart. And then if you're sitting on the floor, you can sit in one of any number of cross-leg postures. You can sit with, if you're one of those athletes that can sit in what yoga calls the lotus posture, you can put the left foot on the right thigh and then the right foot on the left thigh, and you kind of feel like and look like a pretzel. But there is some stability in ability to sit in this lotus posture. In Tibetan Buddhism, it's called the Vajra posture. But Kempo Karthar Rinpoche, when he first started teaching us, he urged us not to push our body and to contort our body into funny shapes. He said, it's probably going to be so painful for you to do this. He said that you might need to do it, to practice doing this kind of posture when you're doing something to distract yourself. He said, do it while you're watching television. He said, then you can deal with the pain of trying to put your body into this posture. But he recommended instead that we, instead of trying to do these particular difficult postures, that we just simply sit with our legs crossed, or in the half lotus posture with one leg on top of the other, or you can even just sit in what's called the easy pose with one leg in front of the other. Whichever of these postures that you use, you place your legs in the posture, and then you have a cushion under your bottom. And the cushion can be anywhere from 4 finger widths high to 8 finger widths high, depending on how long your legs are and how accustomed you are to sitting on the floor. And so you start with crossed legs on a cushion, and your hands again are palm downward on the legs. This is called the posture of Marpa, the translator, because if you see iconographic images of Marpa, the teacher of the great yogi Milarepa, he sat this way with his hands palm downward on the legs. And then some people like to use the posture that is depicted in Buddha statues, left hand on the bottom, right hand on top, thumbs touching, and then the hands are then placed in the lap and so forth. But Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche said, even though this is a traditional posture, he preferred to teach the Marpa posture because he said this posture is, though it is traditional, he says it's meant to go with the Vajra leg posture so that you can place your hands on your upturned feet. He said, when you can't do that, he said, what happens is that people start to sag forward inadvertently because their arms are long and they sag a little bit after they sit for a while. And he said that with the Marpa posture, the posture of placing the hands palm downward on the legs, that he says you're more like a triangle that way. You're more like a tripod or a triangle, and you're able to hold the upper part of your body up. And so you start with the legs, and then the seat. You can rock gently from side to side and tuck in the muscles of the back side on your cushion, and that stabilizes you on your cushion. The shoulders, hands and arms, the shoulders can be straight. I had a yoga teacher tell me one way to do that is to feel the breastbone moving up. And when you do that, you have a good posture with your shoulders, hands palm downward on the legs. The chin can be tucked in slightly, which straightens the neck vertebrae. The eyes can either be cast downward just a few feet ahead, or if that's difficult for you, you can lightly close your eyes. Although there is one danger: if you lightly close your eyes, you might end up falling asleep. Lastly, you can touch the tip of the tongue to the upper palate behind the front teeth as a way of relaxing the muscles of the face. So there you have it. The posture: legs, seat, the back with its nice natural curves in it, the shoulders, hands and arms, the chin, the gaze, and the tip of the tongue. We start by just feeling our body resting in the posture. And then we begin the technique. We've already had the mental preparation of the motivation, placed our body in the posture, and now we'll start with one deep breath, breathing through the nostrils if possible, but through your mouth if you're congested. Breathe as though the breath is going below the navel, and then breathe out. And then allow the breath to come and go naturally, placing your attention on the breath as it comes in and goes out. We'll try this for a minute or so. Mental preparation, motivation, deep breath, breathe out, and then follow the breath. And then at the conclusion, making the aspiration that your practice benefits others. You make a mental dedication. And then you let your mind rest for just a moment. And that's a simple instruction on meditation. Because the instruction is fairly simple, there's not a lot of elaboration that needs to happen, except for talking about what to do when there are thoughts. Because virtually everyone will experience, when they place their attention on the breath, what they'll get at the beginning is they'll get a short period of attention to the breath. And then that period of attention to the breath will be interrupted by a thought, something from the past, maybe something from tomorrow, maybe something going on right now, maybe. And so when that thought arises, it will captivate our attention. And what do we do then? Well, the easiest method I've ever learned, and I learned this from Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, is a technique of noticing and labeling and letting go. I believe that one of the masters called it touch and let go as a technique. So what you would do is, when you notice that you're distracted by something, you'll turn your attention briefly to the thought. You'll be touching it with your attention. You can even label it thinking, if that helps. And then you let go of it, and then consciously redirect your attention back to the breath, and think of that redirection as a fresh start to your session of meditation. It's like, now I have a fresh start. I'm taking a fresh start. And then you return to your attention on the breath as it comes in and goes out. And so in this way, you are able to redirect your attention back to the breath and think of that as being a fresh start, and then reestablish mindfulness, which will again last for a short period of time. And then it will let go into a little bit of mental wandering. And then you'll notice it, label it, thinking, let it go, and then return. So if you would be sitting for 2 or 3 minutes, what you would notice is a short period of attention, followed by some wandering, followed by redirection back to the breath, and then for a fresh start, then reestablishing mindfulness on the breath. And then if you wander, then you return it, and so forth and so on. Several people have said to me that one of the best things they ever heard from a meditation instructor was that meditation is not about clearing your mind of thoughts and not having any thoughts. It's impossible, first of all. And second of all, it's impossible because your mind manifests, your mind experiences. Cognition is a thing. It's what our minds do. And so because we have these minds that do tend to move, then it will only stay in place for a short time, but then it will be distracted. And then if you notice the distraction, label it, and then return again and again and again, this establishes a slightly longer period of attention, and it makes the periods of distraction slightly shorter. And then this is the goal over time, is to make the period of attention just a little bit longer and the period of distraction a little bit shorter. And in this way, we can begin to feel as though we're gaining some control over the processes of the mind. So in any case, I wanted to stop here for a second to see if anybody has questions up to this point about the techniques of meditation. Questions, you can type them in chat, you can ask them on audio. No question. Okay, here we go. Turning attention. Oh yeah, okay. It says the question is, I appreciate you talking about turning your attention to the thought before labeling it. I sometimes label my thinking so I can get rid of it. So the instruction on touching the thought and letting go is very helpful. Thank you. Oh, good. I'm glad. That particular technique, once they taught that technique to me, it was like a big difference for me. The idea, because what we're doing with this practice is we're training our attention. First we are not attentive, but then, first we place our attention, and then our attention may stay for a while, but then it might wander off. But once we notice that and we can touch it and label it, then let it go. And the idea is it's a very gentle touch. It's a very, very gentle touch, because if we try to be rough with it and say, no, I must not think, I must not have thoughts, we can't do that. We can't be rough. We have to just say, oh, there that is. Okay, then let that go and return, and then watch the breath again. Or I say watch, but we're observing it. We're turning our attention to the breath as it comes in and goes out. I try to avoid using two words when I teach meditation. I avoid two words. One is focus and the other is concentrate, because that's a little bit too much. Whenever I tell another human being to focus or to concentrate, they always push really hard and they over focus and over concentrate. And my teacher told me that if you press too hard on your mind, it's kind of like pressing too hard on a piece of paper with a pencil, and then you break the pencil lead, so we have to have a nice, easy, gentle touch with it. If we become gentle with how we work with our thoughts, you will be amazed. You will actually start being gentle with other people in your life, because how we treat ourselves is how we treat other people. So if we are sort of rough with ourselves, then we'll be rough with other people, and vice versa. So there's that. So thank you for the comment. And then the question, if we want to dedicate the merit of a particular meditation session to helping one person or situation in particular, like to helping KTC have success in the rebuilding, do we do that during the dedication at the end of the meditation session? And is it okay to just dedicate it to one thing instead of all sentient beings? Oh, great question. We asked my teacher, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, how to do this. And Khenpo Rinpoche was a great meditation master. He founded the Columbus KTC and like maybe 20 other KTCs around this part of the world. And he was very wise about these things. And he knew our minds and how Westerners' minds work. He was just amazing. And so somebody asked him this exact question. And he actually said, you do it in two stages. He said, you do it at the end of the session, first of all. You do it at the end of the session. But stage one is, he said, first you say, I dedicate the goodness or the merit or the virtue. You can call it goodness, you can call it merit, you can call it virtue. I dedicate the virtue to all sentient beings in general, but most especially for this person or this cause or this situation. And in this way, he says, nobody gets left out. All sentient beings are at the beginning, to all sentient beings in general, but specifically for this person. So that I hope that covers both of those for you. The next question. How much self-talk is recommended during meditation? Like thinking the word thinking. Can this be done without words? Oh yes, it can definitely be done without words. Each person, what I noticed, I've been teaching meditation now for a long time. It's like more than 20 years. And what I've noticed is that individuals are really, really different. They're really different. The words that click for them in learning how to meditate, they have different words that work for them. They have different techniques that work for them. Remember, we were talking about pressing, don't press too hard on your mind. They have a different pressure to use, and everybody is completely and utterly different. So some people will need a lot of attention. So for example, they will need to, not necessarily using words, by the way. Some people will like words, but other people won't. They'll find them distracting. They will follow the breath all the way in. Then they will follow the breath all the way out. And then some people will even count the breath. In breath, out breath. They will mentally count 1. In breath, out breath. They will mentally count 2, and so on. And what this is, I call this like a tether or a leash on your attention. You're putting a leash on your attention. And some people need that much of a leash. The breath all the way out, the breath all the way in. They just stay with it all the way out, all the way in, and they count. Other people find that to be too much. And so maybe they won't count. Maybe they'll just observe the breath all the way in, observe the breath all the way out. But they also could take away some of those extra leashes or props. Maybe we'll call them props, like you've propped up your attention with these things. You can let go of the counting first. Next, you can let go of the attention to the in-breath and only be attentive to the out-breath. And eventually, Khenpo Rinpoche said you can be attentive only to the sensation of the breath as it comes and goes from the nostrils. So he said you have all of these artificial props up under your attention so that you notice when you've wandered. Watching the breath going in, being with the breath going out, counting, and so on. But eventually you'll be able to drop the counting first. Next, you'll be able to drop the attention to the in-breath and only be attentive to the out-breath. And then finally, only to the sensation, the bare sensation of the breath as it comes and goes. And then he said, when all of those become easy for you, you can then begin to raise your gaze off the floor. Each time you make one of these changes, there'll be a little bit of a wobble as you try to adjust, and it might be a little bit difficult. So I hope that helps. So the question was, how much self-talk is the right amount? Your amount of self-talk will be different. If you do self-talk and then you go into spinning off into a story about something, that's too much. That's too much. But then again, if you don't have enough of a tether on your attention and then you kind of go wandering off in another direction, that's also not good. It has to be just right. It has to be just right. So I can't tell you for you how many will be right, but you'll know it. I hope that will help. Any other questions? On audio, does anybody have any question they want to ask on audio?
Hi, I have another question.
Sure.
So over the years, as I've been trained in this technique, I mostly use the breath as a meditation object,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes it's anxiety provoking for me, or
Oh, yeah.
or extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so I presume it's okay to find other meditation objects if you really need
Yeah.
to.
Yes, actually, I'm glad you brought this up. I'm really glad you brought this up because I have met a number of people who have had that same experience, that when they become aware of their breath, it like becomes a little too much and it almost becomes a little claustrophobic.
Uh-huh.
And so what is good to do at that time, according to the teachers that I've talked with, is you can then use either a sound as an object or a visual object. The visual object can be something, I think I actually have some in the drawer back here. It could be a smooth, round river stone that's very unremarkable. It has to be, if it's like super remarkable, then you'll make up stories about the river stone. Anyway, but you can place this river stone on your table and then just be attentive to you. Your eyes can literally look at that stone forever, but your attention is going to start wanting to go somewhere. And then the idea is to bring your attention back to that stone. Another object that can be used in meditation, not necessarily this big, but an image of the Buddha placed on your table, facing you on your table. And then you can look at the image of the Buddha. In terms of sound, I've been told that it's better to have sound that doesn't have emotional content in it, like not songs with lyrics. And sometimes it's really difficult to use music, period. But it is possible to be aware of sound without putting in any kind of intentional input into it, like, oh, that's a beautiful piece of music, or oh, that's not a beautiful piece of music. The idea is just to be aware of either the thing you are seeing and then returning your attention to that thing, or the sound and then returning your attention to the sound. Does that match with your experience with that?
Yeah, it really does. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Yeah, no, this is great. And what you'll notice is Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche said, everybody's different. And he said, some people, when they first sit down to meditate, he said, everything is great. Everything goes really well. And they can follow the technique and they can notice distraction and return. But the longer they sit, the more it kind of breaks up and it doesn't work out. He said, these sorts of people should sit for shorter periods of time, maybe more often in the day. And then the other type of meditator is the type of person who, when they first sit down, it's like a pinball machine. They're like here, they're everywhere. And it takes a long time for everything to kind of settle down so that they can follow the technique. And Rinpoche said, those people need to sit for a longer period of time. And this is all based on a quotation from the ninth Karmapa, who in one of his meditation manuals said you should always leave your meditation on good terms. And so what Rinpoche said that meant was that you shouldn't sit for so long that you become really frustrated. Or if you're the other type of person who, when you first sit down, it's a mess, you should continue to practice until you get to the place where it works out and it smooths out a bit so that you don't feel frustrated. So I think that's those are some things that can help. So thanks for that question.
Thank you.
Then, oh yeah, somebody said the advice about not going into the story is always so helpful. Oh yes. Yes, the example of the car door. Here's the thing. Let's say you're meditating, right? And you hear outside your window, you hear a car door slamming. And you might momentarily think, huh, car door. And then you're back watching the breath again and not, everything's fine. The problem comes when you hear the sound and then you go, is that my neighbor? Is he parking in my space again? I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. Then you've kind of fallen into a distraction. So the important thing to do is to notice when the story starts rising. because sometimes a distraction it's not really a distraction to be momentarily attentive to a sound or momentarily attentive to a thought. Because if you let it go and it just disappears, well, then no worries. So thank you for that. Okay. So last call for questions on this section. Okay. So now we've learned the basics of meditation. And the powerful moment in this technique of learning to meditate is the moment that you notice a distraction, label it, let it go, and then consciously return to the breath for a fresh start. I call that the power moment of meditation. The reason I call it that is because that's the moment when we decide what we're going to hold on our mind. We make the decision right then. We've made the decision. And so we are empowered by that moment into realizing that we ourselves can work with our own mind. It also is the moment when we realize that thoughts are discontinuous. Now, I know that's a really weird word, but hear me out. Usually when we're thinking of something, it's like a stream, and we think of that thought as being really real, and the story that it's telling us is really real, and maybe we'll even start to feel sad or feel happy or whatever. But the instant we recognize that we're thinking and then let it go, that thought utterly disappears. And it's as though we have gone away from the world of that thought. We have taken rebirth outside the world of that thought. And by letting go of that thought, we have been able to make a change in what we're doing. We have been able to make that change. We decided what we would hold on our mind. And the reason that this is important is because so often we think that our minds are out of control. And we feel bad because we can't seem to get control of our mind. But just that simple technique of noticing and letting go gives us the knowledge that we can begin to make some changes. I was talking to a friend about the benefits of meditation. And one of the benefits of meditation is that you begin to notice what's on your mind when you are not meditating. It suddenly reveals to you, like, you mean I'm thinking about that? Or you mean I'm still worried about that? And at first it's a little bit disconcerting because it's like, oh my gosh, you mean I'm still thinking about that so many years later, and so forth and so on. But don't be too disappointed because it also means that you now are gaining, yes, it's self-awareness. You're finally realizing how your thoughts are influencing how you feel and how you think. And what's great, I mean, this is like good and bad. It's like, oh, now you know what's on your mind all the time. But the bad part is you like know what's on your mind all the time. And then there's this sense that you have to take responsibility for what you hold on your mind. That's like on us. Whatever we decide to invest in and dive into, that's something that's actually under our control. That's a weird feeling, but it's a good feeling because we can begin to make changes in what we do. Here's an example. Sometimes we tend to get impatient. Let's say maybe we're waiting in a line, or we've been waiting for something to come or arrive, or we expected somebody to call us and it didn't happen, and we're becoming angry about something. And what we can do is the moment we begin to feel the tug of that anger or that frustration, when we get a little tug on this, then we can actually begin to key into a different response. We can actually begin to make a different response. And that's something we'll learn a little more about tomorrow when we learn about keying into compassion for ourselves and compassion for others. But even if all we do is key into the idea that I can make a choice about whether I follow that thought or not, that's kind of a good thing. When I was a child, this actually happened to me. My grandmother used to say, well, before you say anything when you're feeling angry, you should count to 10. And then, bah, but the idea is, even though it was kind of a silly thing, I felt like it was a silly thing, like, don't open your mouth when you're angry until after you count to 10. But what's really interesting is that was actually kind of Buddhist. My Catholic grandmother taught me something kind of Buddhist, in that one of the things we can do to work with our emotions is take a breath. I mean, we don't have to count to 10, but even if all we do is be attentive to our breath and anchor ourselves in our body and in our breath for just a minute or so, this might help us work with how we're feeling. And if we can do this, then we can begin to get some space for ourselves and begin to feel some stability within ourselves. And that will lend itself to our feeling better in the next moment afterward. So I thought I would share that with you as one of those things that will arise for you after you've been meditating for a while. The other thing is that once you recognize your patterns, you can begin to make aspirations to work with them. In Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche's book, Dharma Paths, he suggests that meditators and people who are beginning their Buddhist path make a mental or physical list of the things they want to work on in their personality. He says, if you make a list of the things that trouble you about your personality and that you would like to change, he said, this has got several valuable uses. He said, one use of this is that you will know what you need to make aspirations about. He says, like, for example, if impatience is your problem, he said, then every morning when you wake up and you do your Buddhist prayers on waking, he said, you can also make an aspiration. Today, may I tame my impatience. Today, may I tame my impatience. Now, you notice we said tame. We didn't say eliminate, we said tame. You got to start kind of where you are and baby steps, right? So I'm going to try to tame my impatience. At the end of the day, when we come back to make our evening Buddhist prayers, we can say, well, how did I do today taming my impatience? And then we can think, okay, that went pretty well. I rejoice in that one. That one did not go so well. I will work harder tomorrow. And in this way, he said, you can make progress on the changes you'd like to make. And then the other thing he said was, he said, the other benefit of making a list of what you want to work on, he said, is that when other people begin to point them out to you, you will not be offended, which I thought was a really great thing, because if you say, like, if you've written impatience is my problem, and then somebody says to you, you're so impatient, you won't say, no, you'll say, oh, that's number 10, so the idea is you won't be so surprised when other people point them out. And it buys you a little bit of self-humor and a little bit of lightness and being about yourself and so on. And so mindfulness is not just about sitting in meditation. It's about being able to work with and notice your moment-to-moment thoughts and work with them. And so that's just one of the benefits of doing meditation. Now I realize I have a little bit of time left. So if it's okay with you, I'm for the sense of completeness, for the sake of completeness, I'm going to discuss two little things and then we'll close for the evening. The other thing I wanted to mention is, what do you do when you're meditating and you feel sleepy? And what do you do if you're meditating and you feel agitated? So I wanted to share with you the techniques that Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche taught us about these things. Now, these are variations. I received this one from Rinpoche personally, but there's a variation on this in his book, Dharma Paths. In the chapter on taming the mind in Dharma Paths, that's his other book. In this book, he also gives a variation on these techniques. So for example, let's say you're feeling sleepy. He said sleepiness, Rinpoche said sleepiness comes from several different sources. He said first, he says you need to get enough sleep at night. So make sure you're getting enough sleep at night. Start there. And then he said second, the second thing that can bring on sleepiness is, he said, is trying to meditate after you've had a meal. He said, after a meal, your body is busy and it's digesting, and you're gonna be a little slower and you might nod off. So he said it might be better to meditate not immediately after a meal. Another thing he said makes you sleepy is being too physically warm. So he said, if you're feeling overly warm, take your sweater off or sit with a breeze. And then he said, you'll be less likely to fall asleep. And so he said, those are some things that you can do to help. But he said, if you're still feeling sleepy and you've made all of those changes, he said, what you can do is, he said, you can actually tip your chin up a little bit and look up into space in front of you. And he said, you can imagine a shaft of white light going up. I tend to see it as going diagonally away from me into the sky. And he said, and imagine that you're sending your breath as it leaves you. Imagine that it's going up into that shaft of light, and that it is coming back to you as light, and that it illuminates your body from within as though a filament was in a light bulb. And he said, you do this for several breaths, going up and then coming back down as light. He said, only do this for as long as it takes to dispel the sleepiness. Then he said, you can bring your chin back to the normal position and cast your eyes downward again. So he said, just do it for a few breaths. And he said, that should dispel it. He said, if that doesn't work, he said, then he says, it's probably time to stand up. And then he said, stand up and kind of shake it off a bit. And then he said, and if that doesn't work, he said, go splash some water on your face. And he said, if that doesn't work, he said, think about impermanence. And the idea, he said, basically, he said, think about death. The idea is, he's trying to say, think about something that'll kind of wake you up. Like, oh, things are impermanent. I need to do a little meditation here. And he said, if none of those things work, he said, don't feel bad. Just take a nap. Don't feel bad. Just take a nap. He said, obviously you need it. So he said, don't worry about falling asleep. He says, if you need a nap, take a nap. Wasn't he amazing? He's just so practical, right? So that's what to do if you're feeling sleepy. But maybe your problem is not that you're feeling sleepy, but that you have that pinball thing going where your mind is like here, there, and everywhere. And it's like you're having a movie play in your head or whatever. When this happens, Rinpoche said, it often happens because you're cold. So he said, then put your sweater on and warm yourself up a bit. And he said, if you haven't eaten for a while, he said, you might want to go get a snack. So he says, if you're really hungry, your mind will also be agitated. And then he said, if those things don't work, he said you can also use visualization, and just like before. And the visualization in this case is you have your eyes cast downward, right, already. But then Rinpoche said, you imagine a shaft of darkness going into the earth in front of you. And then as you breathe out, think that your breath goes down into into that shaft of darkness, and that it comes up from the shaft of darkness. It comes up, and then I know this is going to sound weird, but he said, but it illuminates your body with darkness. I know that's like, that's what he said. So it just kind of, you have that grounding energy, so to speak. You have that grounding darkness. And he said, again, do it for only as long as you need to dispel the agitation. So that's what you do. You do it just as long as you need to dispel the agitation. And then after that, he said, resume the practice as you did before. So I needed to make sure I explained those, what to do with sleepiness and what to do with agitation. Now we're coming up to the very last part of the evening, and we're going to be breaking for this evening. But I'm thinking that one other thing I want to say about this practice of basic mindfulness, is that it will help you in many areas of your life. It will help you to hold a stable mind in difficult situations. It will help you become more aware of your own feelings and thoughts so that you can perhaps express yourself better if you need to. And I know one of the people asked about mindfulness and creativity. I think what mindfulness can do for creativity is it can cut down on the worry and the stage fright that can happen in any creative endeavor. Because when a person is working in art, any art form, they can sometimes overthink their art, and they can become weighed down by concern or worry. And one of the benefits of meditation is that it does help to cut short repetitive thinking. And so if we learn how to cut short the repetitive thinking, the potential of actually being present with our creativity is increased. So I know that's not a complete and total answer for the person asking about creativity, but if we are present with the art form, whether it's a visual art or the art of music or the art of dance, if we are in movement or whatever type of art we're involved in, if we can be present with that art form and be present with our own expression, then that to me is a powerful thing, being present. And in fact, it allows us to be present not just with our audience in art, but be present with ourself and our expression. Additionally, another thing that mindfulness can help us with is being more present with the people in our lives. Because we all know how many forms of distraction we have coming at us every day. I've had so many people tell me that their cell phones have made their life worse because they're always being distracted by the beeping and the booping and this, they're just always distracted. So I have some friends who've begun having quiet time. What do they call it in the news story? They call it library hours, like when they are not going to be available and when they're not going to engage on social media and so forth. They're actually cutting that down so that they can have some more personal time. But you can also be more present with people when you're not always worried or concerned about things. And so you can be more present, you can be a better listener. So there's a lot of benefit that can come from mindfulness. Um, I think that's probably all I wanted to say tonight. And but I know that maybe there may be another question out there. And if you have a question, you can type it into chat. So any particular question? Mhm. Oh, yeah, I find it difficult to be mindful when I am speaking. Yeah, I know. You know, me too. It's something that's I've had my whole life, you know. I think what happens for me, I don't know about your experience, the person asking. Yeah, yeah, I know. You know, I'll tell you what, that is, I've had these problems my entire life. And when I first became a public speaker, it was even worse, you know. I talk a lot anyway and have been a talker all my life. And that's not a bad thing because often the things we can talk about might be good. But I think allowing for silence, and I think what it is that people tend to feel discomfort with silence, that they worry about what might happen in a silent moment. Um, and I think it takes time to become comfortable with silence. And I think that even if all you can do is notice, the questioner is asking, you know, what to do when they speak fast. I think slowly as you learn mindfulness and meditation, you'll begin to notice, and you might try to speak a little more slowly. You know, and I think that the other part of it is just going to be time, because I noticed that when I was in college in particular, I had a lot of trouble with this very thing, speaking very quickly and feeling very agitated when I speak. And I still get really excited, but things began to slow down for me a little bit and get slower. And I went to my teacher thinking, oh, I've made some progress. Oh, guess what? You know, I'm feeling better about things. And you know what he said? He said, you're getting older. It's just maturity. You'll be all right. It's like, oh man, here I thought I was making Dharma progress. And what you're telling me is I'm just getting older? Anyway, but beyond that, I think that being able to notice when we're getting tense and becoming aware of our tension and just stopping to breathe, and then rehearsing this in our mind when we're not with people and when we're not talking, kind of rehearsing in our mind, taking a breath and just waiting for a moment, you know. But some of us are just, you know, our brains are quick and that comes right out our mouth. We've been this way our whole life, so maybe that won't change. But at least perhaps the things we say eventually will become meaningful things. Um, I I I like to think that I'm a better listener now. I like to think that. I don't know if it's true, but I like to think I'm a better listener. And I like to think that I can put myself in the position of the other person who's listening to me and try to have some compassion for myself and some compassion for them, and to say things that will be important or useful for them. That's kind of that's how I make my excuse for still being talkative. You know, may it be of benefit. And so maybe that's something you can try, is just when you wake up in the morning, say, I'm going to try to tame the speed today, and I'm going to try to lower a little bit, and then just a little bit, and try. And if it, you know, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, but just keep practicing meditation, never stop, because meditation is going to be with you your whole life. and it will help you in your whole life. So just be patient with the fact that it takes time. It took me a long time. I had to wait until I got a lot older before I was able to slow down. So thank you for your question, and I'll say a prayer for you, because I know how that feels. Are there any other questions? Okay. Well, I'm really appreciative of that you guys have been great listeners tonight. And I'm very delighted that you chose to come to this session of the fall retreat. And maybe we'll sit then for just another 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll dedicate the merit of our session. So once again, placing your body in the posture of meditation, the mental preparation of wanting to benefit sentient beings. Having placed the body in the posture of meditation, taking one deep breath, breathing out, and then allowing the breath to come and go naturally. Placing your attention on the breath as it goes out and as it comes in. Practicing touching and letting go with your thoughts. So we'll sit for just a short time. Okay, that's another short session of meditation. Now, this evening, when we finish our session, I remember something that Situ Rinpoche told us. He said, when you finish a session of meditation, he said, after you've dedicated the goodness of your session and dedicated your merit, he said, just sit for a moment and don't do anything. And the reason he said that we would do this would be because he said some people tend to be very excited and jump up immediately after they finish meditating and become engaged in some activity or thought. And he said this impulsiveness is not in harmony with the idea of being mindful and meditating. So he said, try your best to just sit for a moment doing nothing. And then when you get up and engage with things, try not to be too quick and not to move too quickly and so forth. He said, let the mindfulness of that session on the cushion go with you a bit. And then during the rest of your day, from time to time, just sit and do nothing with your mind. Just let your mind be. And it's easy to do this, he said, when you're trying to remember, so you can write yourself a note, just breathe, and then carry that with you through your day. So thank you again for being here this evening. I enjoyed meeting you. Yeah, hi. I really enjoyed meeting you. It was great to hear from you.
Aaron, hi, Lama. Can you
Yes.
please just recap tomorrow?
Yes. Yes, tomorrow. We're going to start at 10 a.m. Eastern time, and we'll have another session tomorrow morning. And then the presenter tomorrow morning will be Lama Berner. He's going to present on the next stage of meditation, which is working with emotions and with compassion. He's going to talk about that tomorrow morning. And then we'll go from 10 to 12 tomorrow. And then from 2 to noon session. I thought it was from 1 to 3, but it's actually from 2 to 4 tomorrow. And this is all Eastern time. Okay.
Okay, so my follow-up on that is that I'm one of those people that found out about this at the last minute, but I'm grateful to be here. I will have to juggle some things, and I just wanted to know if it's flexible that we will be able to attend as subject to our other obligations.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, this is what I tell people at the beginning of the fall retreat every year is I say, this is your retreat. Do what you need to do. And I've even said this, you're not going to believe that I said this, but I actually say to people, look, if you need to take a nap, go take a nap. This is your retreat, but, do what you got to do. But be here when you can, and it's fine. And we will be recording all of the sessions, and we will slowly be making them available on YouTube, and you'll receive an email if you registered on Eventbrite, which you did, or you wouldn't be here, right? So if you registered, you will receive an email with I'm going to try and send everybody an email tonight with the Zoom coordinates for tomorrow morning and so on, for tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon. And then if I can get this uploaded to YouTube, you'll also have the link for tonight's talk.
Do you think the Zoom coordinates are going to be different for tomorrow?
I can't remember. I'm embarrassed to say this, but I can't remember. I'm the one who organized it, and I don't know. So they might be different. I wish I was experienced at this sort of thing, but I'll do my best. But I'll send an email tonight.
Okay.
And then give everybody the coordinates for tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon too.
Great, thank you.
Okay. I see somebody waving at me. Hildy, did you have a question, or are you saying bye bye? You're just okay. Yes, thank you. Okay, so let's dedicate some merit. We dedicate this session to all sentient beings, making the aspiration that all beings are free from suffering. They come to happiness and then to Buddhahood. And coming to Buddhahood, may they emanate in all directions and benefit sentient beings endlessly. We dedicate the merit with this thought in mind. And I'll recite a short prayer in English. Through this merit, may all achieve the omniscience of Buddhahood. May it defeat our common enemy, wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may we free all beings, may we free all beings, may we free all beings. So thank you. And take good care of yourself. I see Lama Tom. Okay, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
And thank you.
Thank you, Lama Kathy.
Yes, thank you.